All right. Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me? Are we live? I don't know. Are you live, Jim?
I can't.
I don't know. Test 1, 2, 3.
Hello. I think it's just a fan.
Could it be the fan? No?
There we go.
All right. We're live. So, good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's board meeting. I ask that everyone stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Excellent. All right. Well, thank you, everyone, for coming tonight. And we have somewhat of a short agenda, so I know tomorrow's going to be a big day in the history of Cornwall, so hopefully we can get through this relatively quickly so everyone can be bright-eyed and bushy-tailed for tomorrow's long day. So with that said, I would like to ask if there's anyone in the audience who would like to provide us any of their comments. Please come forward, state your name after grabbing a microphone. Anyone? Okay, well then let's move on to the next, which is one of our favorite topics for every regular session meeting is our student updates. And tonight we have, again, Nick and Kate. And I'm not sure who drew the first straw, but please, Nick and Kate, take it away.
All right, so is it on? Okay. So we're going to start off with Willow Avenue Good News for May. We celebrated Teacher Appreciation Week, May 6th through the 12th. Willow teachers were shown lots of love and appreciation from our students, families, and PTO. A big thank you for all that they do, and to our PTO for making everyone feel so special. The 4th grade spring concert with 4th graders from COH and Willow took place on May 14th. The students wowed us with their musical talents, and each ensemble put on an amazing performance. Our 4th graders also visited the middle school this month. While they went on a scavenger hunt and got to ask the middle schoolers all of their questions. They are definitely ready for middle school. 3rd graders took a walk on the wild side when they traveled to the Bronx Zoo. They explored the zoo and learned all about the different animals and their habitats. The sensational 2nd graders took a walking trip to the Cornwall Historical Society. Students created their own family trees, and Mrs. Camlett analyzed them to find out where their families originated from. Students enjoyed exploring artifacts of Cornwall's history and visiting Town Hall. We are looking forward to a fun and busy June as we count down to the last day of school. All right, and moving on, this is Cornwall Elementary School Good News. The month of May has been jam-packed at Cornwall Elementary School. From May 6th to May 10th, our amazing PTO put together a full schedule of events for Teachers and Staff Appreciation Week. This year's theme was Our Teachers Are Out of This World. The PTO celebrated all their hard work of our teachers with a bagel breakfast on Monday, sensational salad and sub luncheon on Tuesday, cosmic coffee cart on Wednesday, galactic goodies hand-delivered on Thursday, and an astronaut frozen yogurt bar on Friday. We are so lucky to have such a wonderful PTO who are always going above and beyond for our students. On May 7th, Mrs. Gleason's and Mrs. Moore's 3rd grade classes finally released their trout into the wild. The students watched these trout grow from egg to alevin to fry and to fingerling. Then they set them free in the creek behind our school. So much was learned from watching them grow and go through their life cycle. Gavin Locke, a kindergartner student from Mrs. Osborne's class, taught himself how to play piano. Without ever taking a lesson, Gavin was able to learn the golden hour. He is also advanced in reading, writing, and mathematics. Gavin has made amazing strides in Mrs. Osborne's class this year. We love having the opportunity to watch our students succeed and grow, both inside and outside of the classroom. Mr. Baldock from CCHS, as well as another parent and Mrs. Prisco's first grade class, brought in baby chicks for the students to see. They shared some facts about the baby chicks, such as how they like to be together because they are social animals. They will be full grown in 18 weeks and they will lay eggs one day. Also, everyone in the class got the opportunity to hold the baby chicks. What a fun day. We are now looking forward to the 4th grade field day, K through 4 fun day, lots of field trips, 4th grade moving up ceremony, and many other end of the year celebrations.
All right, and I have good news for COH. The PTO held its annual talent show on Friday, April 26th. There were 22 acts involving more than 33 students and 1 teacher performance. Each act was extremely polished and the audience was thoroughly entertained. Thank you to the PTO and Mrs. Zareski and Mr. and Mrs. Landestoy for putting the show together. The 4th grade students visited the middle school in person on Monday, April 29th. The middle school administration and members of the counseling department greeted them with open arms. The students participated in a scavenger hunt that brought them around the building with current 5th grade students. It was a great introduction to life in middle school. Thank you to Mrs. Palumbo and her staff. On May 14th, the COH and Willow 4th grade band, orchestra, and chorus came together to perform at their annual spring concert. The students enjoyed performing with peer musicians from the opposite elementary schools. A dress rehearsal was held on the morning of the concert for all 3rd grade students from both elementary schools at the high school. All performing groups did a fine job. Teacher Appreciation Week was held May 6th through May 10th. Thank you to the PTO for putting together a theme for each day. For example, on Tuesday, the students were asked to bring in a flower or a picture of a flower to show their appreciation. Needless to say, each classroom had an array of beautiful flowers on display. The week culminated in a wonderful luncheon. On May 10th, the COH PTO hosted their annual Spring Fling. 4th grade students from all 3 elementary schools gathered at COH. Despite the weather, the students had a wonderful time dancing to great music, eating awesome snacks, and playing Gaga Ball. Again, thank you to the PTOs from all 3 elementary schools for helping with the event. All right. Good news from the middle school. Incoming CCMS 5th grade students had an opportunity to visit the middle school in May. Students were matched up with current 5th grade students for a scavenger hunt around the middle school, learned about classes, programs, and activities. The students then had an opportunity to meet with some professional middle school students, 7th graders, and ask them questions about CCMS. Incoming 5th grade parents were welcomed to the middle school with an orientation. Parents learned all about CCMS and adolescent development. Mr. Quick, our school counselor, shared the role of school counselors for our 5th grade students and how they will be assisting our students in their transition to CCMS. This evening, CCMS orchestra students participated in the Cornwall Central School District Strings Showcase. This event is a beautiful way to showcase the district's strings program. And good news from the high school. As the year winds to May has been full of activity for all CCHS students. As the year winds to an end, finals are among us. Congratulations to those who took AP exams. All your hard work has not gone unnoticed. The 2nd annual Dragon Day took place on Sunday, May 19th, and it was loved by the community. The Student Leadership Council did a great job fundraising and organizing this event to help benefit senior scholarships. Members of the Cornwall Central High School band, orchestra, treble choir, concert choir, jazz band, and mixed chorus participated in their spring concerts over the past 2 weeks. All the members of these groups rose to the occasion and performed with true confidence and musicianship. Seven of our CCHS 9th grade musicians were selected to participate at the Junior High All-County Music Festival at Monroe-Woodbury. These musicians excelled at a challenging audition back in February and were honored to perform with the top 300 musicians from around Orange County. With sports beginning to wind down, we want to give our continued support to the track and field team in their ongoing accomplishments, with the girls placing 1st overall and the boys 2nd overall at counties this past week. Looking forward, we want to wish the juniors a safe and fun prom on Thursday.
Well, excellent. Thank you so much for both of you sharing that good news. I know this is a tough time of year, especially for seniors. And so I ask that you consider yourself dismissed so you can go and partake in your final preparations as you get ready for graduation.
Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. All right. Have a good night.
You too.
Okay, after that good news, I think we should just rest. But we still have some more things to talk about this evening, so that brings us to Superintendent's report. Terry?
Thank you, John. So we had a lot of conversations. Okay, I've got it. All right, so at the beginning of this year, we had conversations about changing the cycle that we have in place for approving superintendent goals. So as promised, my team met as we usually do. This time of year, we already met with our principals and directors in a mini retreat to talk about goals for next year, both at the district level and the building and department level. So I just want to share kind of our thinking right now, see if there's any things for consideration, because the plan moving forward would be over the summer to really solidify the superintendent goals and the board goals so that we're not in the cycle of having conversations like that in October, where that train has left the station and the district is rocking and rolling. So the three areas that I'd like to focus on for next year, the first being around the 2024 engagement survey. I have a good amount of experience with this. It is no joke to take an ample data set like that, analyze it, and figure out what next steps are going to be over the course of a year, and then to engage in that engagement survey again at the end of next year. So my number one goal will be to provide the leadership necessary to really work with our principals, our department chairs, the board, with regards to identified areas that we could grow in and the strategies that that would entail next year. So I think that that goal is spot on, and it's going to be the work that we're doing anyway next year. Goal number two is really a continuation of this year's goal in the area of diversity, equity, and inclusion. Very, very proud of the work of our community, our board, and the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee itself. That really showed in exemplary manner how tough conversations can happen without being the headline in a news story when we're trying to benefit all of our students. So I'm very proud that we have a policy in place. My second goal is really in alignment with that policy. So goal number two is in collaboration with the CCSD DEI committee, develop and begin to implement a plan to ensure equitable access and opportunity in order to promote greater achievement for all students. Hopefully that sounds familiar because that's verbatim from the policy. And then goal area number three, I think that we haven't spent enough time really focused on this as a district, is really around our growing E&L student population. So it's going to be really looking at what we're currently doing, what should we enhance that we're doing really, really well, and then what are some areas that we could grow and improve in with regards to ensuring that all of our E&L students are achieving academically, and what gets lost in that equation far too often is they're working to achieve academically all the while becoming proficient in the English language. So that would be goal area number three. Open to any questions, feedback.
Any questions? So Terry, I think it would be useful. I think it's been great that we're getting ahead of the game. Catch up is always tough, and as they say, if you fall behind, you're going to get left behind, right? We don't want repeats of the past. So thank you for meeting with the folks already. I guess next steps is for the board to provide you some early feedback. I know in the summer it'll become a little bit more formalized. We're ahead of the game, but to provide some feedback. So I know this is the first that people are hearing about it this evening, what Terry's initial thoughts are from input from his team and the like. So would it be appropriate? I think so. If you think about it, and then next time we meet, which I believe is our last meeting of the year in June, to either flesh out or provide some, comments, feedback. We're not looking to finalize anything. We're looking to provide some valuable feedback to Terry, so we can move this forward. Does that sound like a plan? Knowing that the target date to have this finalized would be July at the latest in August, as opposed to September or October, right? That's what I think we're all working towards. Yes, Christine.
Refresh my memory. When will the survey results be compiled and give you a high-level overview of what you're?
So that's a fair question. We'll talk about the survey. We hope to have the survey results in a manner for board review at our next meeting. So I think things are starting to kind of fall into place, but it's an excellent question, and I think without that, you're kind of left to the wind, right? You don't know direction. Exactly. It helps things. Yep. Great question. Anyone else? Brendan?
Maybe this is a question for you and for Jim as well. I know that, Jim, you've sent out those emails regarding the board goals. I apologize. My hair's on fire with the budget videos and all that stuff. How is this going to how are these processes going to dovetail? Because I think this is great, and I think when we talk about superintendent's goals, it's important to identify what other aspects or what other parts of the goal creation process we still have to cross, so that we don't just funnel all of our goals feedback into his superintendent goals. Because I can think of a bunch of goals off the bat that aren't really superintendent goals, but would be funneled into this. So maybe we can talk just briefly about that so we can see the whole picture there.
So that's a great question. Jim, hop in when I get done. Look, this is all about alignment, right? And I think that alignment process happens two ways, right? There's a bottom-up component to it, and there's also a top-down. And where the two kind of meet is where the discussions happen, okay? It would be great for people to provide Jim feedback on where they think the board should focus and the district should focus going forward. Now, some of that's going to come out probably from the results of the engagement survey, and we'll have that next week. So that conversation is going to start at, I think, the next meeting. And then you get you brainstorm, you iterate, and then eventually you get to a point where you've finalized to ensure that there is alignment and not, divergent paths amongst what the board is looking for, what the community desires and needs, and what Terry and his staff have focused their efforts towards making happen. So that alignment process, I think, is a work in progress, and Terry's goals is the first step in that. I think our next step is to respond to Jim and then he will collate and try to percolate the common themes that emerge. And then with the engagement survey, we'll kind of look at all these three things next time and see how that all plays out. Jim, you got anything more to add?
No, I think that's fair. I think I'll just add that ultimately, I think the engagement survey is the first step towards a long-range planning process, which we all wanted to work on this year. We are finalizing the RFP for that. We've identified 4 vendors to send that RFP to. So I think ultimately we kind of do this a little backwards, and in the long run, the long-range planning, the goals will fall out of that. But until we get to that point, I think what John described is accurate. I sent out an email saying, hey, everybody send me your goals. I've had one member say, I'm going to send you goals in 2 areas. To be fair to myself, I said, I'm probably going to have goals in these 2 areas, and I didn't write them down either, so in any kind of formalized way. So I was ready to maybe kick off that discussion this meeting if we had that, but so let's try in the next week and a half. If anybody has suggestions for goals, please email them to me. Not that I'm the keeper of them, just as John said, if 3 or 4 people send the same exact thing, they can be combined into one goal.
Yeah, it's
and then
ju-
we can discuss as a board at the June meeting, kick off that discussion.
Right, so just to clarify, because I think there's probably some confusion perhaps that I created unintentionally. I asked Jim to reach out to the board to get that input, right? So it's, we're a leadership team of sorts. We work together. We try to, make things happen. And if it's come from Jim, please, I hate to say, make the assumption, but I can't imagine something coming from Jim that he and I haven't talked about and we're on board together with. So that said, it's really important that we collaborate and work together on this, because otherwise we're putting Terry and his team in, between a rock and a hard place. So I know everyone's been busy, so if you can, spend a couple hours thoughtfully thinking about what you'd like to see and what we need, and provide that feedback to Jim, that'd be really helpful. Thank you. Christine.
Couple hours, I don't know, John. My question is
Well,
really...
I'm slow. I'm not a quick study like you,
No,
so it
stop.
takes me longer.
So I don't know if it's appropriate. Is it possible for us to get the data from the survey prior to the meeting so that we can have an informed discussion? Because otherwise, I'm making goals based on, my kind of what I would like versus what I think the community, teachers, and students are telling us.
My hope is that we will have, again, some form of analysis and results for our view, for the board's view.
Before the meeting.
Yes. Okay. But don't let that be the single driver, right? Some of the brainstorming process is just reflecting on what incorporating what others' feedback is and what they're looking for is important, don't get me wrong. But if we wait on that, we may be waiting to the last second. I don't want that to occur.
Can I add one more?
Please.
It's important too, just to send me your thoughts if, and I will distribute everybody's thoughts. Again, I'm a secretary in this enterprise. It's important that even if we decide as a board that an issue's raised, we say, that doesn't rise to the level of being one of the 3 or 4 most important things that we're going to do this year. Doesn't mean that it's not an important issue that we shouldn't tackle. Just because something's not in the board goals doesn't mean that we can't take it on as a board, if appropriate to take on as a board. So I think it's important to put all those issues out there. Even if they don't make it into the goals, they may be a worthy endeavor of their own.
Yeah, really good conversation on the superintendent's report. Terry, do you have anything else to add? Because I think we've segued into the president's report, which is great because it kind of reduces the things that I was going to talk about. So just to be clear, we talked about goals. I can scratch that off my list that I had. We talked about the survey. Let me provide some data that Terry was kind enough to assemble for us. And as everyone is aware, I think the survey closed Friday at close of business, whatever close of business is defined as. But I have to say that I'm very impressed by the participation rate or the respondent rate that we received. Okay. Some of these numbers are astounding. And so let me kind of go through each of our groupings with everyone so they understand who's performed the best, because there are some stellar performances that I want to highlight in terms of respondent rates. Okay, so school performance scan, which was basically a scan of the schools of instructional and non-instructional staff. We had over 349 responses to the survey. Those are individuals responding, which gives us a response rate of about 70%, which when we talked about how we would define success, 70% was like a threshold was considered as a great target, but according to, I think, our advisors, right, the engagement folks that helped us with the survey, they thought that would be just exceptional. It'd be quite the standard. And so from a staff perspective, we're at 70%. Pretty good. Okay. So from a secondary student voice, which is middle school, high school, we are at, well, we have about 1,900 middle schoolers and high schoolers combined, we had over 1,500 responses, which gives us a response rate of 85%. Wow. The middle school carried the day with a 96% response rate. 96% of the middle schoolers responded to the survey. 96%. That's an A+ in anybody's book. I tell you, that's fantastic. Okay, so let's talk about elementary school. All right, so we had about 414, not about, we did have 414 responses of a population. Remember, we did it, what, from third and fourth? So 442 was the population, a response rate of 94% of elementary school students of that population. COH, they get the gold star, 100%. Fantastic. Followed by CES at 93% and Willow at 90%. Still, all exceptional. That's just great. Now, that brings me to like the family engagement survey, which is, we've been noodling about how would you model a successful family engagement, right? You have sometimes one parent, sometimes you have two parents. Maybe you have, grandparents and parents, depending on the family situation. How would you define success? Well, I started looking at it from a response perspective against the number of students we have, right? Similar to how you kind of look at when you're doing a development, right? How many kids per family are you gonna have? So from a family engagement survey, we had 715 family responses. And depending on how the calculus goes, I see a response rate of anywhere from 57% down to about 35%. Still, that's more than what we get on normal school votes on budget day and for candidates and the like. So I think overall this activity, at least from the numbers, right, incredibly successful. And so overall that translates to about a 70 to 75% rate of response, which means I think the communication of this was exceptional, and all the different mechanisms that were used to get people aware and then tickled to respond seems to have worked. So hats off to everyone involved. Fantastic job. And as Christine points out, our next step will be to see what the feedback actually looks like, the content of that. But with this, so far so good in terms of success. So, Christine?
Are you going to come give a presentation?
That is part of the plan, yes. It's okay, so that's on the survey. Jim mentioned the RFP. Let me kind of enrich that a little bit. So I believe that we have the elements agreed to. Terry, I'm looking at Jim both because we've been working on this for a while. So I think we now need to take some of the boilerplate language that we normally use for RFPs, have that attached to the specific aspects of the engagement task that we're looking at, and then send it out. And I think that happens this week. Terry, what do you say? Is that
As much as we can. Harvey's been a little busy with budget, but
once we get through the vote, knock on wood, right?
We'll tackle the.
It'll be our next big step, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So the thought there, just to circle back with everybody in terms of timeline, is that we'll have responses on the RFPs so that we can at least frame not just the engagement, but the costs associated with it, and then have a more meaningful discussion of whether you want to do it or not. Because I think everyone would like to do it. It's just a matter of time, expense, and other issues that we need to flesh out. But I think we're making good progress on that. So hopefully we'll have something tangible to really discuss provided to everyone before our meeting so we can discuss it at our next meeting. Seem fair? Okay. That takes me to the last item. Okay. And that is, as you know, we're kind of down the stretch we come. We just had the Preakness this last weekend. I didn't get to watch it, but the end of the school year is soon. There are a lot of housekeeping steps that we need to do. We have two specifically that are our responsibility, the board's responsibility, that I will be sending an email out tomorrow and asking for your input. One has to do with Terry's evaluation. He's already put together his own self-assessment along with accompanying what I'd call support, lack of a better term. So we have the superintendent's eval that we need to accomplish. I'll get into the specifics when I send out the email, but what we're looking to do is have that finalized, at least from a feedback. Everyone provides their feedback before we roll it all up before next meeting. So our next meeting, I believe, is the 8th. So if I can have everyone's responses by the 4th, that gives me a couple days then to kind of collate and aggregate all the responses, so then we have a tangible document that we can then put out and discuss and meet with Terry on. I think overall we need to have this finalized by the 30th of June, but I do want to have that conversation once we roll up everyone's input on this, okay? The second item is our own board eval. We're getting, as you know, we've established as a goal that we're going to do this every year. I will put that as the second part of that email that I'll send out tomorrow, along with the linkages to get into that. And I thank everyone for their cooperation and input in making those realities happen. Okay? Great. Thank you, Jim.
That's what I wrote down.
Yeah. And that then takes us to, that is it? Yeah. It is.
Okay.
So
We'll close it.
they will move on to the consent agenda. I'm sorry. Consent agenda. Is there anyone wishing to have a item on the consent agenda discussed separately? Right now we have one, two.
I'd like to pull item number 6, please.
So item number 6 is the Flyer Fernandez LLC. Okay, Jim, got that? Is there anyone, Christian? Number 5 is placement of CPSC and SC or CSE cases, okay? Anyone else? So we have 5 and 6 we will discuss separately. So could I have a motion for the consent agenda that will consist of items 2 through 4 and 7 through 9?
So moved.
Thank you. In a second. Thank you very much. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Motion passed. Thank you very much. Okay, so let's do this in order. Numerically, a motion for item number 5, placement of CPSE and CSE cases. Motion, please.
So moved.
Second. Okay. Discussion. Christian. Okay. Thank you for that. All right. So motion, second. We've had our discussion, I think. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? That's, Christian, your cue. You're, got it. All right, so let the record reflect 8 yeas, 1 abstention. All right, thank you, Linda. Okay, so that then brings us to item number 6, which is the Flyer Fernandez LLC tax cert resolution. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you. Discussion, Jim.
Same as Christian, I just need to abstain from this vote.
Excellent. Any other discussion? All right, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions?
Abstain.
So Linda, let the record reflect 8 yeas, 1 abstention. Thank you. All right, fantastic. Okay. So then moving right along, that brings us to our non-consent agenda. New business. Before we have a motion and a second, or a second on this, let me kind of tee up this issue, just to kind of review where we've been on this item. The policy committee, under Jim's leadership, was working on a number of policies this year. Prior to this year, there was an item, that I believe Bass was looking to have added to our policy manual and proposed a policy. That happened toward the end of last year, if I recall. That moved on to this year's workbench, and the policy committee reviewed it, vetted that proposed policy, actually was able to consider some legal opinion that was provided. Again, this is end of last year, beginning of this year, that I think the Honeywell memo came out on this particular policy issue as well as other items. The policy committee considered all of the various angles associated with this, and as a result, took a vote on it. The vote was, I believe, 3-1, where the policy committee did not recommend that this policy be presented to the full board for consideration. Then the next step is, as everyone knows about our policy framework, Policy 2410 allows for board members to be afforded the opportunity when a committee action is not in keeping with what they believe is proper, that issue can be elevated to the full board. That way, a committee doesn't have the full power of the board. It's the full board, and the committee actually works on behalf of the board. So it all types works. And earlier this year, the proposed policy, I received a request for this proposed policy to be put before the full board for consideration. There's been a number of items that I think that have been circulated. One is the policy itself in the current form that you see it. And another item is, I believe, a letter that was, I call the legal opinion, that was initiated last year. I think it was addressed to Brendan when Brendan was the president of the board, that came from Honeywell, talking about a variety of different issues related to the proposed policy. And I know that document encapsulates a lot of other items, but I'm just focused our attention tonight on the specific policy itself. And then I believe I provided the board the actual policy 2410, which is the reason why we're here this evening, is because we've had a request by a board member that this policy receive board consideration. Now, that said, that's why we're here this evening, for that policy to receive board consideration. I would like to lay out my way forward as it pertains to how this discussion or issue will proceed.
As everyone knows, all policies have a first reading. Sometimes those first readings, when they're actually old readings, are waived because of the magnitude of the changes are more conforming and not contextual or meaningful. I don't think we've had a situation where we've had policies that have not received a first reading. That said, all the policies that have received a first reading were motioned and seconded by the board in order to have that discussion. Assuming that we can get to a second and have that discussion as it pertains to this proposal, I ask that we have a discussion that would be very, how shall I say, respectful of opposing views. I know we have different views. We have 9 board members, so that we probably have 10 opposing views on a number of things. However, I ask that everyone be respectful if we have that discussion and respectful of everyone's time. We don't need to be engaged in a lengthy conversation about this. From my perspective, the vote, which is the third piece, is pretty cut and dry. The resolution calls for us to accept the policy as written as a first reading. My interpretation and understanding is that a yes indicates that the board would accept that first reading, knowing that then the next step is for that policy to be presented at our next meeting with a resolution to adopt. Okay? That said, a no vote would indicate that the board rejects the first reading and that the issue will no longer be considered. And when I say no longer, I don't want to say forever, because never say never. However, that term would be considered indefinitely until such time that the full complement of the board, i.e. the majority, would feel comfortable moving forward with the proposal, which would then start the process again, which would then send it back to the policy committee and have it do their work and then again come to the full board. So that is kind of how I see this or prefer this to play out this evening. I don't really want to spend a lot of time on it. I do believe that respect is a very important aspect of collaboration. And if somebody sees something, I encourage them all to say something. And in this case, we have a board member who has seen something and they have said something. So I believe that's meritorious of our consideration. And so let's consider it and then move forward. Does that seem like a decent way to proceed? And I'm looking around, and I'll ask Jim, because Jim and I have kind of talked about this at length. Do you have anything that you'd like to add? Well, great. So that then brings me to the item in question, which is the first reading of a proposed policy numbered 0102. Could I have a motion? Is there a motion? Bass has motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Christian, second. Okay. Discussion. Bass, please.
First, thank you, John, for putting this on the agenda and pursuant to one of our policy that exists. And you explained it very clearly, and I can maybe reiterate quickly for our community. We have a process here when, when you come up with a new policy, the adoption of that policy is that the policy committee discusses it, deliberates, and makes a decision to go for it, to go against it. Now, whoever is proposing that policy doesn't have to abide by what the conclusion that came out from the policy committee is. And this is exactly what happened. The policy committee voted 3-1 against the policy I proposed, and pursuant to the policy we have, that's why I'm here tonight talking about it to the public, because with all due respect to the policy committee is made of people who can think this way or that way, but that excludes the rest of the board member who are not part of the policy committee, and the process allows them to deliberate as well and provide their opinions as well. So that's why we're here tonight. And I'm going to be as brief as possible. This policy that I like to call proposed policy, social and political activism, right? So, and whenever you want to propose a policy, you can't propose a policy similar to something that exists in the policy book, right? It has to be something new. I mean, you go through the policies, you see that, well, there is some items that are not discussed, and these are important to discuss. There was an example where kind of something happened because there was no policy to address it. Now, that incident was resolved. I don't want to go through the details, but again, I think having a policy that have covered that whatever happened, that individual would never try to do or say something that was said or done. So this is kind of, I'm trying to improve, and I think all of us here around the table, we try to improve existing processes. As much as possible. So whenever you see room for improvement, you got to do that. And this is kind of where I'm coming from. So if you allow me here, I don't want to bore anybody, but believe me, I strongly believe that I have to read the policy itself, and allowing again the community who didn't have a chance to hear about it or to read about it to see what we're talking about here. Just 4 sentences for actually 5 lines. So what I'm saying is the proposed policy should say, in helping to avoid divisiveness, bullying, and ostracism, the Board of Education prohibits social and political activism in all the CCSD 5 schools. This covers any sort of political and social activism inside the classroom. This is important. Inside the classrooms, not in the hallways. Inside the classrooms, carried out by teachers and push-in counselors during the school year, regardless of the subject taught, to include the distribution of any social and political literature by any means. The board strives to keep social and political causes outside the CCSD 5 schools boundaries, right? Students and teachers have the freedom to engage in social and political activism as private U.S. citizens outside CCSD properties. And I read that paragraph to point specifically that we are not talking about students here, right? Preventing students from doing any sort of activism. We're talking about staff, right? And I said here, teachers and push-in counselors, right? So I'm excluding very explicitly so the student from this process. Now, with all due respect to the legal counsel letter, and John, our board president, did attach the legal opinion in his email today. John, is it available to the public? I think, and maybe Linda can put it so everybody
so
can.
Bass, just in general, legal opinions are confidential and privileged. And so we're not going to cross that line.
Okay, so, right. Again, with all due respect to the legal counsel, the letter that was received in June 2003, that's like almost a year ago, and I can say that I started talking about the policy at the beginning of last school year. So towards the end of the last school year, we received the legal opinion. I mean, I'm just stating some facts here. I went through the letter and I read it, said something's missing here, something's wrong. I read it second time, third time. With all due respect to the legal counsel, they missed a very important point because they kept talking about student. First Amendment of the student. You can't do that. And I said, I'm not talking about students. I'm talking about teachers, counselors going to the classroom, not teaching, because we do have a policy actually, and Mr. Dade, just pointed that out in previous conversations. We do teach controversial topics, controversial issues. There's a topic about that. And actually, the chair of the policy committee this year, Jim, gave an example during one of the policy committee meetings. Very good example. I love that example. He remembered when he was in the classroom in high school, how a teacher teaching Jim a controversial topic, how he took a neutral position, let the students debate. And he said by the end of that class, you would never know what side that teacher was on. That was a perfect example. That's exactly what I'm talking about. However, I'm not talking about teaching. I'm talking about out of the blue, a teacher goes to the classroom and says something about whatever, something controversial. Biden is so-and-so, Trump is so-and-so. Abortion is so-and-so, abortion is so-and-so. Has nothing to do with the topic that's taught during that day. The cops are so-and-so. The veterans are so-and-so. That's what I'm talking about. When there's a policy in the books that says you can't do that, madam, sir, you can't do that. Okay, so that's what we're talking about. So first of all, the legal counsel went on and on about talking about students. You can't infringe on the students' First Amendment.
Hey, Bass.
I'm not talking about students.
Hey, Bass, I don't mean to cut you off. I just want to say, let's not focus on the legal opinion because they're providers of advice.
I'll stop it there. Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks. Yeah, I'll stop it there.
The issue, just to clarify.
Almost done.
I just want to just clarify something. That the committee looked at the legal opinion. The legal opinion talked about a variety of issues directly focused on the wording of the policy, and it was the policy committee's position, and Jim, you can correct me on this, that the policy had some flaws to it as to its unenforceability, its lack of specificity, and that as a result, it was problematic from the start in how it was framed. That was the committee's majority position on it. And I don't want to give anyone the impression that the legal opinion is what's driving anyone's action here on the board or in the district. As fiduciaries, the 9 of us are responsible for the decisions that we take and the policies that we employ and hold the standard, the admin and others, staff, responsible for adhering to. That's on us, okay? So I just wanted to make that important distinction, that it's the committee's position that it was not enforceable and it lacked specificity and it had some other issues that I'd love to phone a friend right now on, but I'm sure Jim, maybe once you're done, Bass, he could elaborate.
Once Bass finishes.
Okay? But I just wanted to
thanks.
interject. And so if you could just...
I'm going to wrap it up.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, John. So I talked about the students, definitely explicitly excluding the students. I'm not talking about the students. I'm just talking about teachers, counselors, CCSD staff going to the classroom and just volunteering their opinions there in the classroom on these divisive topics. To be clear, new students clubs, those are excluded. I mean, if you read the policy, you can tell that students are free to do whatever they want. Of course, they have code of conduct they have to abide by, but I'm not talking about preventing, say, starting a new student club about a subject that is controversial or divisive. I'm not talking about students, I'm talking about staff. I'm repeating myself. And to wrap it up, the policy covers the classrooms only. And again, because I'm talking about the classroom, now the first thing that comes to mind is like teaching. And I was faced with that opinion again and again that, hey, Bass, we do have a policy that addresses teaching controversial issues. And I kept saying, I'm not talking about teaching. I'm talking about, let's say, a math class, and the teacher just felt that morning to talk about abortions, for instance. Right? So that's kind of, I'm not talking about teaching, right? So I'm not talking about teaching. The last thing is, again, I heard, and maybe kind of you explained it again very nicely, John, define activism. What do you mean by activism? Okay, so do you want to kind of maybe do some wordsmithing? Do you want to talk more about it? That's left definitely to the committee. I heard something about like legal issues and litigation. We get sued. Why do you want to sue us? Right? I mean, if I'm a staff member, can't I control myself giving those 2 or 3 classes? I don't know how many classes I have per day, but do I really have to go inside the classroom if I'm a teacher and just vent about social issues the night before that took place somewhere, in the United States? I don't have to do that. I'm paid to give that math lesson. I'm paid to give that social studies lesson, whatever that is. So I believe I can control myself within the school boundaries, not to vent about things, not to try to impress the students with my smart ideas about one issue or another. And as I said again here, political activism as a private citizen outside CCSD property, feel free to do whatever you want. Block the traffic, hold signs, placard, whatever. If you want to go start rioting somewhere, I'm not going to stop you. But I'm talking about the classroom, right? So again, going back to wrap it up from the beginning, what I said, our policy book doesn't cover what I talked about tonight. That's why the proposed policy. Thank you.
Hey, thank you, Bass. Okay, so that's the opening salvo. Thank you for clarifying your position and walking us through how you got there. That's very helpful for us, I think, as a board as we weigh this topic. Jim, could you enrich some of the things that the committee would consider?
Thank you, John. I'll be very brief. Make a few quick points. Number one, the policy as written is overbroad so as to be unenforceable. There are terms such as activism and, forgive me, I'm forgetting the other term that's in there, that are not, and social causes that are not defined in the policy, so therefore it's an unenforceable policy right there. So a policy that is unenforceable is not a good policy. It has, the language is unclear about whether or not it applies just to staff members or students. One sentence applies just to staff members explicitly. The sentence before that is open to interpretation whether that applies to staff or students. The legal opinion from Honeywell has 2 sections, one applying a First Amendment analysis both to staff members and then as well as to students. So it's 2 different First Amendment analyses. Either way, we have potential issues with the policy on a First Amendment basis. So that's point 2. Point number 3, and Bass, you mentioned several times there that you're talking about teaching controversial issues in the classroom and you don't want the math teacher talking about sensitive issues. The policy committee felt that this policy did not merit further reworking to be introduced as a policy because that is covered explicitly in Board Policy 4810, teaching about controversial issues, easy for me to say, teaching about controversial issues. Point number 1, teaching about controversial issues, and I quote, "In the classroom, matters of a controversial nature shall be handled as they arise in the normal course of instruction and not introduced for their own sake. Such issues shall be neither sought nor avoided." I think that clearly covers the case of a math teacher trying to introduce abortion. So for those 3 points, the policy committee felt that this policy did not merit further discussion, and we did not recommend it for the full board for approval. Thank you.
Hey, that's great, Jim. Thank you. And let me also kind of embellish the ground here as we talk about this maybe more briefly going forward here. But I looked at the policy manual pretty thoroughly, and I see Larry Berger, my friend and former colleague, who spent a couple of days working through the policy manual trying to bring it back to bring it up to the 21st century, as I recall. And I found a policy that I think not only has the spirit to what some of the items that Bass has highlighted, but also addresses it by the letter. And as much as the policy committee looked at the controversial topic policy, which I think is a pertinent one that actually did receive some modification, if I'm not, that's right, Jim?
Correct. We voted about that. Not last meeting, but 2 meetings ago.
Yeah,
we
so
added to the teaching
so
about
was,
controversial issues in response to Bass's request, and we felt that modification of that policy handled this as a committee. Thank you.
Right. So there's a couple ways that one could skin the cat on this, and so that was enriched or improved, I guess, if you don't like the term enriched. But the policy that I'm talking about that also kind of helps frame this issue of inappropriate political speech in the district. And I'm not against politics. I'm just for it in the proper environment. And I'm more concerned about our kids being skilled in critical thinking. And how that is accomplished, I will leave it to the professionals, than I am about political positions being spoken to our students as truth. Because the policy that I'm citing is called Advertising in the Schools, and its number is 1511. And it starts off with the statement that I think encapsulates exactly what Bass's concern is. And it says, school facility staff and school children shall not be employed in any manner for advertising or otherwise promoting any commercial, political, or non-school agency, individual, or organization in the school. Canvassing, soliciting, selling, etc., is not permitted on school premises. And I believe that simple statement, that simple standard, addresses the very concern that Bass has, and I think the majority of the board probably share, that there's a place for those types of discussions, not about what is true or false, but in terms of how you process that to arrive at your own position. That's the skill that we need to impart on our kids. This says, hey, we're not for allowing political and other types of advertising or canvassing to occur in the school. And so I just throw that out there. I don't want to belabor this point. I'd really like to get to a vote, but I want to give everyone the opportunity to be part of this conversation. So Christian, your hand was next recognized, and then Brendan, and then Bass, let me come back to you after everyone's had a chance, because I'm sure I want to be fair. All right, so first Christian, thank you.
So you asked us to kind of keep to the issue about readiness of this policy rather than the substance of the policy. And so I'm going to address that in 4 different dimensions, because I don't think this has been explained, and I think it's important to understand why the policy is not ready. The first one is that there's basically a preamble to this policy which says, in order to deal with divisiveness, ostracism, and bullying. And that is the Tinker standard, because they lay out very clearly what would empower a school district to act on behalf of the welfare of the things to restrict First Amendment rights. And the Tinker decision, which is required by our high school students to take for the U.S. Regents, is pretty canonical here, and it says, undifferentiated fear or apprehension of disturbance is not enough to overcome the right to freedom of expression. And while Bass has talked about, the second thing is that this also extends that when it's extended to the academic freedom of teachers, which was not in the Tinker decision because that dealt with students, which is why I think think some confusion, and that's what came out from the legal opinion, is that the James versus the Board of Education of Addison, which was a New York school district, and the Second District Court of Appeals ruled that school boards, those charged with overseeing the day-to-day interchange between teacher and student, must exercise the degree of restraint necessary to protect First Amendment rights, and basically said that you basically have to adopt a policy that is basically, unless you can identify a specific material pedagogical reason, you cannot, in a sense, just decide to restrict the rights that people have on the First Amendment, whether assembly, religion, or speech, including what you, I think, would describe as activism. Third, we are not prepared as a school district to actually dictate the difference between what is activism and what's curriculum, because the only body that can establish that is a school board, not an administrator, and we do not have a curriculum committee. I look back, we have not made any really rulings on curriculum going back 6 or 7 years. And so for us to say that something is not in the curriculum would be almost impossible for us to basically say, because we have not outlined the curriculum, which goes to our own legal firm who made this argument on behalf of a school district just 18 months ago, and the Honeywell firm was the last case to do this, and it made very clear what it would be for a school district to actually control the academic freedoms of teachers. And they said basically a scope and sequence is not sufficient, and they had a case where a teacher put a lesson about anti-vax from a doctor in a law enforcement CTE class. And the Commissioner of Education, which is still the current commissioner, ruled pretty much completely against the Honeywell law firm's argument on this, to say basically that that is not sufficient, nor that allow a school district to restrict even that type of lesson. And it cited the Malvern decision from the late 1990s that basically had a teacher who wrote a letter to the editor and then included it in the curricular materials was still within the discretion of the teacher. And so the point about it is that we would lose this case because the First Amendment right, even our decisions to guide the welfare to protect the welfare of students from, let's say, indoctrination, it would not even meet that standard. And as I said, this was our own law firm that argued this case.
Hey, Christian, just on that, just to be clear, you said this case, that's a hypothetical situation. We don't have a case.
Oh, no,
just have
this
a proposed
is the case
policy.
that was argued, Commissioner's decision 18-211.
No, I'm talking about just the proposed policy. And I don't want to get into hypotheticals or other issues at other districts.
But the point is, this is the Commissioner's decision, which does govern us as a school district. And it's very clear what they established as a standard for what you could do to limit, let's say, the academic freedom of a teacher to make a decision in a classroom. And the examples you described here would not have that standard. And what they cited in Malvern is basically that basically that we have to keep to the strictest standard possible. We cannot, in a sense, dictate it because our employees have constitutional rights, and they don't forfeit those rights when they become employees. And even, let's say, the ruling on academic freedom about what happens in a classroom have been ruled on many, many, many times, not just for students, but also for teachers. And the point is that we would not win this case. I also don't think we would prevail. And that would mean this a policy that would be in contempt. And a contemptible policy that's not enforceable is not a policy. It invites contempt for the organization that passes that policy.
Thank you, Christian. Okay. Brendan.
So just want to underscore everything Jim said before. I thought that was a great summation of what the policy committee did on this. The only thing I could add to it is just a wrinkle to that, the question of the vague language. I think that it is unenforceable. I agree. And this will be familiar to those in the policy committee, this line of reasoning. I worry about the chilling effect it could also have on staff, because if you don't know where the line is, then you're terrified that your next step can cross it, right? So it's sort of like you turn the lights out in a room and you know there's something dangerous in the room, but you don't know where it is, so you just freeze, right? That's the I think very probable danger of having just a unfleshed, unidentified term such as social activism. You know, everybody's definition of that will be different. So for all of the reasons listed before, I think that those are germane, and individually, the fact that we have all the other policies that I think achieve this goal that you have, but also for the hypothetical scenario and chilling impact it could have on teachers, where because they are afraid of crossing this line, we end up stifling conversations that we would otherwise celebrate. We don't want classrooms where I think teachers are more concerned with keeping their job than empowering students and having inspiring conversations. So I think we should stick with what we've got here. I do want to say, and this is another point that was echoed in the policy committee. I think that, for your own sake, Bass, it's not that I think we know where you're coming from. It was always about how does your intent translate onto the page? And that was always the rubber meets the road kind of moment, right? It's not that everyone was saying, we fundamentally disagree with you. It was the way that this is written would open up a can of worms much bigger than the problem we're trying to solve, coupled with the fact that we do believe honestly and firmly that the problem is already addressed in these other ways.
Anyone else? Louis. No, I want to get everyone else an opportunity before we go back to Bass, just if we could. Thanks.
I'm going to bump on something you just said, John, and reiterate it, that we don't have any litigation currently underway relative to anything that's been discussed tonight. Policy, any issue with the policy, we're on a no litigation. So it got said that the case, we would not win this case. There is no case out there to win or even to deliberate, with the exception of what we're talking about here on a policy. So just to, again, exclamation point that. And Brendan, what you said at the end is what I was going to open with is, I think, I know personally, I agree with where you're coming from, Bass, 100%. Concept is meant, and it's all right. I use Brendan's terms, where the rubber meets the road is where it's at. I do also believe that it's covered in other policies, but, and again, not to belabor, everybody says the same thing. I will, I will just resort back to our attorney and his advice. I mean, the guy makes a career out of making these decisions and has a firm based on, the decisions he's making. I'd like to think that he's not in business to make poor decisions or advise, give ill advice. And I'm going to yield in that direction.
Thanks, Louis. Christine, yeah, please.
I'm going to try to be very quick, but I do want to reiterate, Bass, I think it's important to know that those examples you're giving, I think any one of us would say those are extreme, right? And the work I do every day, it's a lot of decision-making in the gray related to person's behavior. And what we try to always ask ourselves is, what's the reasonable person's standard here? Like, what would a reasonable person think is over the line? And then we have the conversation and we talk through it. And I think that in the policy committee, the other thing that we found was something that was brought up in the past that was a concern, it was handled right away. So I think that our administration uses that lens, if they might not call it that. And I also think that we have processes in place that if something got past that lens and somebody in the community was concerned or upset, they would go through the channels to communicate that so it could be addressed. So I think in the effort of erring on the side of allowing some conversations to happen and not having to micromanage the definition of what is vigorous or what is social activism, I want you to walk away feeling like your cause is heard and covered, and I think that's what we all think. We don't want to go to the extreme where we're stifling other potential growth and critical thinking.
Thanks, Christine. Richard?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Real quick, I don't want to go on, but just to sum up what everybody said, I agree with what everyone said so far. And I don't disagree with Bass and his stance on it, but I think what it comes down to is just how enforceable is this policy in front of us? And I just don't see it. And we also have to take into account just trusting our staff and how this would affect the climate, right? Do we want our staff to be scared of bringing certain things up or not knowing what they can and cannot bring up? So I just think it's not specific enough. I think the other two policies that were brought up covers this to an extent. And yeah, don't want to repeat what everybody else said, but that's my stance.
Hey, thank you, Richard. So, Bass, I don't know, I don't want to turn this into a debate.
Yeah.
But if you want to just quickly.
Thanks. I just want to tell everybody here again on the record what I feel, and I don't expect back and forth. So from what I gathered tonight and all along, actually, I should say, because we met in the policy committee, not only this year, but the previous year. As I said, I brought this up at the beginning of the last school year, so we're close to 2 years talking about this now tonight. What I gathered is this. I think there's a consensus that the policy as written is not clear enough. And because it's not clear enough, it's not enforceable. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. That's kind of what I'm hearing from everybody. And I'm going to tell you right now that I agree with that. Okay? So maybe you think that I'm backtracking, but I'm a reasonable person. I heard that it is not clear enough. There's room to improve the language. And why are we going to improve the language? The answer is to make it enforceable, because everybody felt like, how are we going to enforce that? So that said, I want to tell you again, maybe for the last time, that the two other existing policy, one talking about teaching controversial issues, does not apply, because I'm not talking about teaching. And I gave an example today. A math teacher comes to the classroom and start talking about abortion, either side of the spectrum, right? His job is to go talk about math. So teaching about controversial issues a policy does not apply. The other policy that does not apply, John, is what you mentioned, 1511, I think the number is, because it's talking about employing students, giving them some literature to distribute, giving them some sign-up sheets. We're not talking about that. So again, because the existing policies do not cover what we're talking about, and I think everybody has an appreciation, and I heard it kind of tonight, that everybody is telling me, Bess, we know exactly where you're coming from. We know your intent. We appreciate your intent. And I believe where I'm coming from is I don't see the existing policies cover what I'm talking about. Again, what I'm saying is, and everybody was kind of saying the same thing, is that the language is not clear enough. So I'm ready to go back to the drawing board, clarify the language. But I believe this policy is...
So Bass, I appreciate that offer. I don't believe that is our way forward on this right now. I got a hand over here, so I think Megan has a comment to make. Please be brief.
I just want to make a really quick clarifying point. Sometimes in discussion, when we use examples, it gets confused as fact. I do need to clarify for our faculty and staff, there's never been a conversation in a math room about abortion, because I see eyes bugging out around me, and I know my phone is blowing up. We just need to understand that when we're talking in examples, and I appreciate what you're saying there, Bass, in terms of that example.
I'm talking hypothetically.
I understand. I'm just making a clarifying point that is not an actual situation that's happened here.
Yeah, thank you for that, Megan. Right, and so, again, back to what Louis and I were saying about cases, there is no case. A lot of hypothetical situations have been discussed. However, the real issue for us this evening is, here's a proposed policy. It did not make it through the committee. Bass has afforded the opportunity to bring it to us for further consideration. We have, I think, done a good job of considering it. I think there are some valid reasons on why this policy is not ready, or not say it's ready, that this policy is not required at this stage, for we have other policies that kind of do govern this. And I respect your opinion, Bass, but my interpretation of those policies are a little different than yours. Okay, but that notwithstanding, the issue for us this evening is whether we accept this first reading of this policy or we reject it. And based on where we are right now in terms of the discussion and looking at everyone having the opportunity to talk, I would like to call a vote. So, all in favor of accepting the first reading of this policy 0102, say aye. All opposed, say nay.
Nay.
Any abstentions? Okay, I'm sorry, we did not accept the first reading of this policy. Thanks. Wrong finger at work there. I'm sorry about that. What I was about to say is that based on that no vote, that this issue has been defeated indefinitely, and that if the board were to reconsider it, I suggest it go through the standard process where it goes through the policy committee and get vetted, and then if it makes it to the board, then so be it. I think I've heard a lot of people in agreement with Bass's principle, and the principle is that advocating for a specific political view within the district is not appropriate. That is a lot different than saying we cannot talk about controversial issues, because absent talking about controversial issues, we will never create the skill set in our students to thrive in the mean, cruel world that's outside the four corners of our district.
John, so again, with all due respect, you're missing the point again. I mean, you're starting right, then you say, I'm not talking about whatever you said. I'm not talking about that. It's clear.
Thank you, Bass. Thank you, Bass. Okay, so the motion was defeated. Let us then move to our second round of public comments. Is there anyone in the audience still that would like to come forward and share their thoughts? No? Okay. Well then, great. Let's go to closing comments from the board, and I will start with Christine, please.
So congrats to the girls track team, first place. I love to see that. Yeah, it's amazing. And I just want to, hope everyone comes out and votes tomorrow. You know, I used to commute to the city, and I remember those days coming home, trudging, like, oh, I just want to go home. Just take the 5-minute detour, come in, hit the, you know, the vote button, and it'll be less than 5 minutes. And, you know, really all the best to all the candidates. You know, it's great to see people who want to give back. And just for the record, I'm at a college open house tomorrow, but I did do my absentee ballot. So if you don't see me, it's not because I don't care. I just have another thing going on. So best of luck to everyone.
Thanks, Christine. Hey, Louis.
Very good, thank you. So I want to congratulate the students that initiated and navigated Dragon Day on Saturday. Fantastic event. Like, it was super impressive to see what, you know, those kids put together and organized, and the workaround for the dunk booth, and, you know, you can't put anybody in water anymore, got to splash them now, and so on. And kudos to certain members of the audience that participated. Congratulations. Get a shot. Make sure you're clean. No. So no, it was great. It was great for the students. Bunch of kids out there, the relays. So congratulations to all those that participated. Best of luck to all our students this year for their finals and such, and exams coming up. Study up and get her done. And like Christine said, the vote's tomorrow. Come out for the budget, please. Please, it's important everyone come out and voice their opinion through the ballot. Thank you.
Thank you, Louis. Brendan.
Yeah, I'll keep it short. Congratulations to everybody involved in Dragon Day. Year 2, and a great tradition continues. And I will just say, vote tomorrow. You can vote at 6 a.m. You can vote at 6:30. You can vote at 7 a.m.
It's not Chicago. You can only vote once.
Well, you can vote. This is an or between all of these. But seriously, polls are open till 9 p.m. Christine kind of alluded to it. You know, you might get home from work and you figure, you know, what's it matter? We've literally had years where 2 votes have made a difference. And that was 2 votes in the no direction. I can't legally say what's right or wrong. State ed doesn't like that. But your vote really does count. It doesn't get more local than your local school budget vote and school board election. So it has the benefit of your vote carries the most impact. So absolutely come out, vote. It's all day, 6 a.m., 9 p.m. If you're looking for any last minute information, you can go onto our website, cornwallschools.com. You'll find the tabs for budget information. We have everything up there, videos that explain the budget, the presentation that we gave last week, a bunch of documentation. You can go through all of our board meetings if that wasn't enough and still get as much information as you can possibly handle. It really does count. So please, I cannot say it emphatically enough. And with that, good luck to all the candidates tomorrow, and probably see all of your smiling faces, minus Christine, tomorrow as the polls close.
Thanks, Brendan. Bass. Hey, Carl.
Just want to say good luck to all those running tomorrow, and get out and vote.
Thank you. Christian.
2 things. First of all, since last time we met, we had the STEAM Expo, and there were many great projects and presentations. But I just want to call out the science research students of the high school who provided posters on equine and canine therapies, the genomic aspects of aging, experimental AI, perchlorate remediation, and I believe one also on the migration of humpback whales, but I might be incorrect about that. But I also want to acknowledge their teacher, Sean Meyer, who I think did a great job and prepared them, and they answered some very tough questions. I just want to acknowledge that. And secondly, I just want to, in the past month, a former Cornwall teacher, Joan Winchell, who I believe taught at the high school for 20 years, passed away, and I think it's important that we remember those who have contributed and helped build this district.
Yeah, thank you for that, Christian. Was not aware. Richard.
Yeah, I too will keep it brief. I first want to thank Kate and Nick for being here. I want to wish everyone, all our students and staff, luck in the last month of school. You got to finish strong. don't quit now. We got to keep pushing till the end. And we're very proud of our students. I know me and the entire board is. I too went to the Science Expo. It was phenomenal. I was so impressed. Great job to all involved. Yeah, and lastly, please get out and vote tomorrow. I mean, they say national politics is the most popular thing to go out and vote for, president, governor, but local elections make the most impact to people's lives. So I just think take 5 minutes to go out and vote. Good luck to all the candidates, and yeah, hope to see you at the polls.
Hey, thanks, Richard. Hey, Jim?
We're not supposed to have party debate here in the closing comments, but I want to say that Christian is wrong. Clearly the best presentation at the Science Expo was a third grader from COH who made a Google Slides document about Mexico, clearly head and shoulders above the rest of the crowd.
Jim, if I may, I will admit my error.
Unbiased opinion.
Had video and everything. Get out and vote tomorrow, 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. at the middle school. Thank you. Have a great night.
Thanks, Jim. So let me close real quick. Dragon Day, great opportunity to see our kids growing in roles of responsibility and flaunting their skill set and their people skills. So that is fantastic. Vote tomorrow. You'll have another opportunity to see our kids in action if you do. I'm looking at John Hines, who under his tutelage has put together exit polling that will be run by our students from the high school. Everyone will have an opportunity to provide their feedback on the vote, and we will get a briefing of those results at our next board meeting. So please vote, and if you do go to vote, please participate in that exit polling survey that's being run by our students. The last thing I want to talk about real briefly on this day, May 20th, we're in between Armed Forces Day, which was on the 14th, and Memorial Day, which is coming up on the 31st. I know a lot of people probably took issue with our process tonight. It's somewhat pedantic in having to be formal and to address the issue. In a dictatorship, it would be decided in a second. However, democracy can be ugly at times, and it can take the time. And that's what I think we displayed and modeled for everybody this evening that chooses to watch, which is democracy in process. And I thank you all for participating in that process, and I wish you all a safe Memorial Day weekend. I entertain a motion to close the meeting.
So moved.
A second? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Meeting closed. Thank you so much.